Welcome back to the Choice Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Nastasha Mckeon, founder and CEO of Choice Juicery and author of Plant Food is Medicine. This episode, as well as every other episode, is sponsored by Choice Juicery. So if you want to support the show, you can do so by visiting us online at choicejuicery.com and shopping our online store where we are shipping all kinds of incredible products throughout the nation. Everything from our gluten-free bread to our greens powder, our superfood protein. So many amazing products on there. So please do stop on by the website and support the show. If you're lucky enough to live in Southern California, we also have 7 locations here, and we'd love to see you in there as well. Today, we are interviewing Kelli Russell on the podcast, and she is a transformation expert. She specializes in neurosomatic reprogramming to help her clients release stress, anxiety, and trauma at the root level and establish positive, powerful beliefs to meet their goals at lightning speed. As the creator of Acuemotional Resonance Technique, she integrates subconscious change, nervous system regulation, acupressure-based methods to create fast, lasting breakthroughs. With a background in psychology, counseling, and holistic healing, Kelli has spent the last decade refining high-speed mindset and belief-shifting techniques. Her second book, The Human Guidebook, How to Navigate Thoughts, Emotions, and Relationships So You Can Enjoy Being Alive, will be out early December. So I'm really excited to get her on the podcast. She shared a little bit about the book with me when we spoke last, and really excited to let you guys hear more about that and also just her techniques. As somebody who spent years in talk therapy, counseling, psychology, and went through that traditional path, and then navigated into things like EMDR and then Reiki and, all kinds of different modalities in the name of healing from a super traumatic upbringing. I am really excited to talk to a person who has the background in clinical psychology and then to become a rapid transformation coach. And without further ado, let's welcome her on. Kelli Russell, thank you so much for joining me today on the Choice Lifestyle Podcast.
Thanks for inviting me. So excited to be here.
Yay. There's so many things that I want to chat with you about today. But before we dive into all these incredible techniques that you teach, I want to first kind of share a little bit about who you are with the audience and what got you into psychology to begin with, and then how you graduated out of that onto, I don't want to say greater things, but I guess you could say more advanced tools for healing. I think that's maybe a more polite way to say that.
I grew up in a neighborhood with a lot of kids, a few best friends, and over at their house quite a bit, and in my own household. I looked around and I remember distinctly being 12 years old, and I was looking at the way the partnerships worked, the husbands and wives, and they didn't really seem to enjoy one another's presence. And when they talked about their work, or it was Sunday night and they were gearing up for the work week, I heard moans and groans and complaints like, oh, I got to do this again. And I looked up and I thought, why would all these people create a life they didn't love? I guess in that moment, I believed in creatorship and I didn't understand why one would create a life like this. And I thought, I think I'd like to go into psychology so I could learn, why do people do the things they do? And I did that. I got my degree in psychology and then went on to get my master's in counseling with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy.
Wow.
And we could go into what happened after that a little bit if we want to, but it drew me then into being a yoga teacher, meditation teacher, during COVID, breathwork coach. And then the last 10 years, I've been in the subconscious field, learning neurosomatic tools that actually reprogram the nervous system and the mind, because I believe that's how you get the most rapid change. And I really wanted, I think where talk therapy gets stuck is it's really nice to be seen and heard and have a sounding board and you gain insight. But then there's the next question becomes, now what? I understand what happened to me in my childhood or the roles that we all played, but what am I supposed to do with all this? And what I do now is the now what. We can actually create a change to a desired outcome so that you can live and be a different way. And that's what I'm most passionate about.
I love that. Gosh, so much good stuff there. I want to go back to that experience at 12 years old, which I find fascinating. I always tell people I had kind of like a spiritual awakening at 11 years old. Like that was the beginning of my awakening that took a lot of years. Still working on it, actually.
We all are.
Right.
Yes.
But it was like the first time I opened my eyes and looked around and was like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah.
and started questioning the reality that I was born into. And so I find it
Mhm.
fascinating that for you as well, in those early years of childhood, that you were looking around and being like, why are people creating a life
Mhm.
that they're not happy with? Recognizing,
Exactly.
because so many people, they don't even stop to look around and ask those bigger questions of like, what's
Mhm.
going on here? And for you at 12 years old to look around and be like, why are they creating a life that they don't like?
Mhm.
The awareness around the adults complaining about, "Oh, man, it's the Sunday blue. I've gotta go to work tomorrow, and this sucks," or the relationship thing, that's a big one for me, looking around and being like,
Mhm.
"Why does everybody seem so unhappy? Why is
Mhm.
everybody agreeing to this? Why is this
Yes.
normal and accepted? Like, why are people accepting this level of unhappiness?" And so I find it fascinating that at such a young age, and I'm curious why. What is that, just the way you were wired? And I ask this a lot on the
Mhm.
podcast. Did you come in wired that way?
Mhm.
Or is it something in your experience that made you kind of start to realize that at such a young age?
I was a sensitive kid, pretty
Mm,
quiet, kept to myself, observant. As I grew older, I was the one that somebody would always come to and share their intense life story and ask for advice
mm,
in my young adulthood. So I think there is something about me that feels safe. I'm a really good listener. I'm present, and I think I hold wisdom, and
mm.
maybe that I feel the same when I look at myself the way I used to be. I feel like I'm continually being me, even though I've learned, I grow, I evolve, we
Yeah,
gain new insight, new
of
awareness, new
course.
information, but I always feel like me. So
Mm.
I feel like I would make similar decisions then as I do now.
So you'd say, like, if you were saying nature versus nurture, you probably came in wired that way to some degree.
I think so.
I love
I mean,
that.
most research I do on that is it's about 50-50.
Okay.
So I don't know, maybe I inherited it from my family. Maybe it
Okay.
was, I was allowed to express my emotion and my feeling. Even if I was angry, I was allowed to yell or get mad. And a couple of my friends would say, I can't believe you spoke to your mother that way. I would be grounded for 2 weeks if I spoke that way.
Uh-huh.
And then I asked her later, I said, why did you allow me to speak to you that way? And she said, I read an article that said you should allow children to express their emotions and their feelings. So
Wow.
because I was allowed, I had a voice. When we sat at the dinner table, I had an opinion and my opinion was valued.
Mm,
I think that's very important that I was allowed to speak. I was allowed to, like, my opinion was respected.
wow.
So now I work with a lot of people where that was not the case. They
Mm,
don't know what to say. The words aren't there. They don't know how to communicate. And often that's because they didn't. Either they weren't allowed to, they were made to feel smaller than,
mhm.
they weren't respected, they weren't allowed to talk. And
Mhm.
we're just working on that now in their grown-up adulthood,
Yeah.
and I can provide words that they don't have. And they'll often say, "Oh my gosh, I wish could we just write down what you just said? That's
Yeah.
exactly how I was feeling. That was just perfect. Why can't I say that?" Usually it's because they're in a triggered reaction and
Totally.
the prefrontal cortex shuts down and it's like, "I'm not home
Totally.
right now."
It's interesting because I think in a lot of families, even still today, but definitely in the past, it was children are meant to be like seen and not heard. That was kind of the mentality of
Mhm.
parents. Like you sit over there at the kids' table, you be quiet, you do as
Yeah.
you're told. And so I agree with that a lot. And as you were saying that, I'm like thinking back to my experience. And I didn't have a normal functioning household. It was a lot of chaos, but I did have freedom of expression because everybody
Mhm.
there was a lot of yelling and slamming of doors and, chaos. But I do remember having a girlfriend, one of my best friends in my childhood. She loved being at my house because her house was very sterile. It was,
Oh.
quiet, no raising voices, very, very sterile. She loved coming to my house. And whenever I'd get mad at my mom and I'd yell at her, I'd run to my room. She'd run to my room and she'd open my door and slam it and open my door and slam it. She could do that
Because she's
there,
not
but not
allowed
at
at
her
her
house. Yeah,
house.
exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I was thinking back to that when you were sharing that story of how, yeah, a lot of people
Oh my
don't have that
gosh.
freedom to express. And that was not an issue. I definitely was able to express a lot, maybe too much.
You're like, "Mom, that
Yeah.
wasn't me doing the last two door slams. It
Yeah.
was my friend."
Yeah. So
Oh,
anyways, that's
wow.
interesting. I love that. And I just want to like touch on the fact that you said that a lot of people come to you, they feel safe with you and they come to you and, from early adulthood even, with
Mhm.
for advice and things like that. I shared this with you when we spoke the other day on the phone, but when I met you recently actually at the Halloween party. I was like, something about your energy. You have such a calming energy,
Ah,
such a presence about you. So I can agree with that. In the limited time that I've known you, I've experienced that as well. You just have such a wonderful presence to you.
thank
And
you.
so I understand why people come to you for advice and for support and
I
for you to
appreciate that
track
very
that.
much.
Yeah,
Thank
of
you.
course, of course. So diving back into, so you study psychology, and then went on to do family, was it relationship
Mhm.
therapy
So
counseling?
it was
Tell
a
me about
master's
that.
in counseling,
Okay.
emphasis in marriage and family therapy.
Okay.
And I went through a tough time in my internship hours where I was doing in home therapy with children who were being abused, and the
Oof.
abuser is in the home. I was doing gang diversion. So I was with gang
Oh,
bangers, talking them out of gangs. I
wow.
was doing something called anti theft, where these were court mandated because they got caught stealing something, and I was convincing them not to steal. I was doing something called parenting the difficult teen classes, and
Okay.
the parents that were in the room said, "I don't know why I'm here." And I was like, "I know exact." It was usually the parent that needed the counseling, not the kids. But I sadly saw the worst sides of people. I saw abuse, in some cases torture. I saw misappropriation of funds within the households as well as with organizations, and one of the two places that I worked for, they told me they wanted me to falsify records in order to get grant money. And I
Wow.
switched out of the career. And that's why I went into yoga, meditation, mindfulness, because I was like, this is wild. And because everyone was forced to be with me by the
Yeah.
court, they were so resistant. They didn't,
Mm,
I was met with closed doors and anger and
mm,
frustration. And the sad part, like being with the children, it hurt my
mhm.
sensitive heart too much.
Oh yeah, I could
And
never.
then I was like, I think I could affect more change in a 1 hour yoga class, because I would watch people go in with the shoulders slumped, with the eyes down. And in 1 hour, they're talking to you, their eyes are vibrant, their chest was lifted. And I
Wow.
said, you know what? I think I can impact more of a change here. So I still teach twice a week. I love it. I've been teaching for 15 years.
Where do you teach?
I teach at Equinox.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yes, but my main passion, what I do 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, is work in neurosomatic reprogramming, subconscious change facilitation, helping people as a life guide navigate the trials and tribulations and the stuck parts when they don't know what's next and they feel afraid.
I love that. I want to dive into the neuro subconscious
Mhm.
programming because I have limited experience, but I studied a little bit of somatics when I was learning breath work. I studied somatic breath work. It was somatic release breath work at the time. Now I think they've like recoined it as just somatic breath work. But I ended up at this breath work facilitator training by chance. I had no desire to be a breathwork facilitator, have a full-time job. I'm a full-time mom. I've got my hands full and I wasn't looking for another thing to do. But I had a friend who is on a very similar healing journey to me, who have done a lot of like similar types of healing things with everything from EMDR to energy healing to talk therapy to sitting with shamans in the middle of the Amazon to
Mhm.
like every that you name it, I've tried it. And so one day he called me up and he said, Nastasha, you've got to go to this breath work thing. He's like, this breath work is going to change the world and you got to go. And he sends me a link and I see that it's in Austin, Texas. And I
Mhm.
see that it's a facilitator training. I'm not trying to be a breathwork teacher. Like I'm not doing, plus it's in Austin. I'm not going to Austin for this. So I scratch it off the list. And then like a week later, I see like a somatic release breathwork facilitator training coming to San Diego, first time only ever, you know? And I'm just like, okay, universe, I see you.
Uh-huh.
And so it's like, okay, well, if it's coming to my backyard, I guess I could go. And the reason why my friend wanted me to go was the founder of this modality was going to be leading it himself. And
Cool.
so he wanted me to go have the experience. And so I signed
Mhm.
up, I went, and it was the first time. I've done a lot of work, like I said, around all kinds of things that happened to me. But I had this one particular thing that happened to me when I was 14 that I thought I had healed. I talked it out in therapy for years, did the EMDR, did all the things, and I thought that I was healed. I didn't think that I was holding on to anything from it consciously. I had no conscious awareness of it.
Mhm.
And this is my first like really understanding how deep the subconscious is and how things get stored there without even our awareness. And then we
Mhm.
operate from that stored place without even knowing that it's even
Totally.
there.
Yeah.
And so, just a tiny bit about that experience. Like, I was in this breathwork session, and the first thing that happened was some guy behind me starts screaming bloody murder. And I'm like terrified. I grew up around a lot of like physical violence, abuse, all that
Mhm.
stuff. And so it was really triggering for me. I heard this guy screaming, and immediately I got really scared. And whatever they do NLP cueing like while you're in the breathwork trance. And so
Okay.
whatever they were cueing was like perfectly timed to when this guy was screaming, what was being said that led me into my own experience. And the
Wow.
experience was, it took me through all these traumatic things that had happened. I was like witnessing them almost like a, torture thing where I'm being forced
Movie.
to
Yeah.
watch this thing. It was taking me through all of these things leading back to the main thing that happened at 14 years old. And it was fascinating because I was seeing it and not wanting to see it, and I was resisting it, and then I was feeling all the shame in my body around what had happened. And then as soon as I connected to that shame that was I was feeling in my body, it's like, have you ever seen one of those superhero movies where the superhero gets hit and their soul flies out of their body for a second? It's the only way I can describe it. It's like I'm looking at myself, but then out of me comes this like little 14-year-old girl. But now I'm holding all the shame that I've been carrying all these years, projecting it at this 14-year-old version of me. And I'm looking at her and I'm just hysterical in this moment, crying, sobbing, realizing like I've been carrying all the shame towards this little girl who did not deserve what happened to her all these years. And in that moment, I dropped it, it released. And it's crazy because everything changed. My whole life, there's a before that moment, Nastasha, and an after that moment,
Mhm.
Nastasha. And I'm tearing up as I talk about this because
Mhm.
when you're carrying shame and you don't even realize it, the choices you make about who you carry yourself as, who you surround yourself with, the relationships you sign up for, like everything you do, how you feel when you're sitting at the table with other human beings. Like you're a totally different human. And I didn't even know because it was so subconscious. I wasn't even aware that it was there until I had to look at it. I had no access. And like I said, I have done countless different modalities in my life, but it wasn't until something could get into my subconscious programming that could access that thing that I didn't even know was there, that it could be healed. And
Mhm.
so I'm fascinated by this stuff, but like that's the extent of my knowledge of it. I mean, I went on to have my own experiences with helping others because then I started teaching breath work and finding people having experiences, but I haven't studied really a lot of the science behind how that works. I've learned a tool and I use it and I love it, but I want to know so much more. So I'm curious to hear your experience with that. What led you into that specifically? Obviously your journey through yoga, but like what specifically got you connected to
Yeah.
this neuro subconscious stuff? And what can you share with the audience about what you've learned?
My best friend broke her back in a hiking accident about, had to be like 10, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. It wasn't to the point where she needed a surgery, but there was a lot of pain.
Okay.
And I watched her. We used to meet for lunch once a week, and I watched her do her best to heal herself through first Western medicine, osteopathic doctors, doing visits with personal training that was geared towards working the muscle and the tissue in the proper way to alleviate pain and to build up the muscle in the proper way. So, sports physiologists, things like that. She did like this deep tissue massage twice a week that was very painful, where they got into the ligaments and tendons. The pain didn't go away. Started taking pain pills. That didn't really help much. She didn't want to do that. When we went to lunch, she was standing up because she couldn't sit down because it was so painful. She went to a surgeon and said, "Would you give me a back surgery?" And he said, "I would want you to do a psych eval first, because based on your chart, I don't think you're going to be happy with the results. Like, it doesn't really seem like you need a back surgery, basically." But her pain was so intense. So she went to a different surgeon, and the surgeon goes, "Oh, yeah, I'll do the surgery for you." So they did like 3 different incisions. They gave her like this bone cage, inserted bone dust. She was hobbling around on a walker like a little old lady for 3 months.
Wow.
And then after the surgery itself healed, the pain was still there.
Oh my
Then she started
gosh.
seeking out Eastern medicine and acupuncture and acupressure. And finally, after like 2 years, was referred to this. He was an emotional kinesiologist and a medical doctor in Escondido. He worked with her, and within 2 weeks, the pain was gone. I mean,
Wow.
gone. And
Wow.
he was doing something called muscle testing, applied kinesiology, to ask her body what was going on. Is it nutritional? Is it the circuitry? Is it something mental, or is it emotional? And her body said emotional. And she said, that's not possible. I'm driving around with ice packs. I'm taking pain pills. It's obviously something physical. And he said, well, how would you come back in a few days and we'll check again? And the body still said emotional. And he said, would you be willing to consider this and work with me? And she goes, well, I've tried everything else. Why not? And it turns out there were things that were going on in her marriage, and she was pushing down the emotion and not expressing herself.
Wow.
And it was showing up in the weak point in her body. Like there was a pain point entrance, and that's where she was holding on to everything. And then once she got it out, pain went away.
Wow.
So then it's understanding the mind body connection, started reading books. It changed her life over a year and a half so much. She became a facilitator in a specific method called Psyche, psychological kinesiology.
Wow.
So she started offering me and my husband a bunch of sessions because she did the beginner, advanced, and then the master training. And we got to receive all of it because she goes, I need people to work on. And we
Yeah.
raised our hand. And then our daughter, she was about 10 years old. She started picking her face. She'd get a little blemish, and then she'd pick it and it would turn into
Yeah.
a crater. And she had several, and she'd say, Mom, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't want to do this. And I'd say, well, is anything going on at school? No. Anything going on with your friends? No. Anything going on with me or your dad? No. She's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was looking up self-harm. She was going to school. I bought her healing salve. So she was putting on healing salve and Band-Aids and wearing them on her face to school. And then I looked at her at one point. She had 3 on her legs and 4 on her face. And I said, let's take her to the doctor that worked on my best friend, her spine, and let's see if he can figure out what's going on with her. I took her in. He does the muscle testing. It's basically a truth detector where you're asking questions, and it's either a strong response or a weak response. So it's like a yes and no, true or false. So he, through muscle test, checked, is there something going on at school? Her body said no. Something at home? Yes. Something between you and mom? No. Something between you and dad? No. Something between mom and dad? Yes. Okay. Something they do with their body? Something they do with their mouth? Okay, it was mouth. Okay, are they singing? Are they kissing? Are they yelling? They were arguing. So when mom and dad argue, how does that make you feel? And she said something that was a synonym for anxious. I feel anxious.
Wow.
So when mom and dad argue and you feel anxious, what do? I pick. So that was 7 minutes. And 7 minutes, he looked at her and he goes, sweetie, could you go wait in the waiting room? And he said to me, the rest of the session's about you. And I was like, oh no.
Oh.
So then I had about 3 sessions solo. My husband is like, yes, he says yes to everything. He had 3 sessions solo. We had 3 together, and we uncovered the subconscious stuff that we were really unaware of ourselves that was getting in the way. And then we stopped arguing, and she never has picked her skin again. So and then
Wow.
my friend is doing this work. I'm hearing all about the amazing stories of miraculous shifts and change, and then it's healing my daughter and it's healing our marriage. And then I was like, I need to learn this. There's something here for
Yeah.
me. So I got trained in Psyche, the basic, the advanced, the masters. And then I also got trained in something called emotion code therapy, which is emotional energy healing, where you use muscle testing to ask the body, is it holding on to a trapped emotion? If so, what emotion is it? If we need to find out more, like how old you were or what the event was, we can, and we release it energetically. I've since now, 10 years later, I've distilled down the smaller, most effective sets of processes that I feel are the most impactful. What that looks like lately, I've been using in the beginning of sessions acupressure points. There are 16 that I'm using. I have 2 doctors of Chinese medicine that I'm working with that are sisters that I'm doing research to find out like which ones are the most ingrained with emotion and mental states.
Mm.
For example, we hold fear in the kidneys, we hold grief inside the lungs. So where are the points where we can access that? There's a lung point just on the inside of the shoulder. And as I started having people touch this point, tears are popping out of their eyes. So I'm thinking, okay, there's something to this.
I
So
believe
we'll
that.
use that in the beginning where they self-administer and they will apply pressure and roll the point in circles. And then they'll hold even pressure. And lately I've been asking a question that is associated with the point. And almost every time people are having like emotional breakthrough.
Wow.
Then we're doing short breathwork practices, like 2 to 5 minutes at the
Okay.
most, that are either calming the nervous system or creating a heightened state of consciousness.
Okay.
We're doing short brain techniques that activate and awaken right and left hemisphere of the brain. So the right emotional and creative, the left logical. And then
Okay.
I'm using some psyche stuff where we can get into the stress program itself and bring the stress level down. It's kind of like
Wow.
putting to sleep an app on your phone. And then we reorient to what would you rather experience instead? And we
Mm.
create a goal statement and then we program it in. What would that look like? We create very specific mind movies, kind of like Joe Dispenza-esque, where
Yes, I
you can
love that.
see yeah, you're in this new reality. You've already achieved this goal. What are different scenarios where you can see yourself doing it? What would it sound like? What would you hear people saying about you? What would you be saying to yourself? How would it feel inside of your body? If that
Mm.
feeling is localized, like what does that feel like? And if that feeling has a color, a shape, a texture, a sound, what is it? And then we look at potential blockages, like, well, what could be an adverse impact of getting the thing you think you want? Like, what's the
Yes.
cost of that?
Uh-huh.
And then we'll address that. Like, okay, well, this could happen or that could happen. And okay, if that happened, what would you do? And if that happened, what would you do? So when people have an if then strategy, they are
Yeah.
three times more likely to achieve a goal. And then we
Wow.
formulate action steps. So as you leave my office, what are you going to do differently in your life? And they get to create their own action step. And what are you going to do to bridge these changes into your life?
Mm.
One thing I forgot to mention is we do whole brain activities to rally the brain around this new idea.
Okay.
There are several different ones that I'm trained in Psyche, where I guess you would say it was a cousin or a sister to an EMDR, where we're
Okay.
in a whole brain state, but we're doing this whole brain process so that the system recognizes the change that we want to make
Mm.
towards the new thing, the new desired
Okay.
outcome.
I love
So
that.
that's pretty much it. And using those in different areas in different ways and whatever
Yes.
feels the most impactful and the most important based on what they're working on.
Okay, I want to double click on a couple of those things. There, I saw two videos on your Instagram. You have a lovely Instagram. For those of you who are listening, I'll definitely add links to all that stuff and make sure that Kelli shares that with us here on the podcast. So you can follow her and see some of the stuff. She gives a lot of really cool tips through her Instagram that I've been recently following.
Thank
There
you.
were two that I really loved that stood out to me. One was, I think it was for anxiety, and you showed a point like on the arm between these two things. I thought that'd be cool if you
Mhm.
could share a little bit about that here. And then I want to also talk about something you just brought up again that I saw on there as well, where the mind movie thing. I love mind movies. There's
Mhm.
actually even an app for creating mind movies. I've done it. It's fascinating. I love that, like, visualizing, and those techniques are amazing. I'm obsessed with Joe Dispenza and have been for years.
Mhm.
So all this stuff is up my alley. But you had something on there that I thought was so relevant for so many people. And it was the should I stay or should I leave question.
Uh,
And you answered that so well on there. So I want you to share that with the audience too. But before we go into that, the
mhm.
technique, can you share that with
Yeah.
us that you?
So from the wrist crease, starting on the left side, you'll at the middle of your wrist first go
Okay.
3 fingers towards your elbow. So
Okay.
from the wrist crease, 3 fingers connected to each other. I'm
Okay.
using my ring finger, my middle finger, my index finger. And at
Precious
the
fingers.
line of the index finger, that is a point between the two main ligaments. We apply pressure that's about a 2 or a 2.5 out of 5.
Okay.
And we roll tiny little circles to the left. When we
Okay.
roll to the left, counterclockwise, it's unwinding stress, releasing stress. This one is super good. It's like a special magic PowerPoint for anxiety and panic attacks.
Oh.
It leads to the pericardium, which is the protective muscles around the heart itself.
Mm.
And that energy line leads right to that protective layer around the heart. So as we're rolling it, I would recommend just close your eyes, drop into your body, notice any sensations that you feel. If you feel panic or anxiety, you can breathe deep into the lower lobes of your lungs, expanding your diaphragm as you breathe into the belly. And I ask people just to notice any sensation, and it might feel different from the area that you're touching. Some people will notice that their chest expands, or that they feel spaciousness in their belly, or they'll feel movement in their legs. And then after we do that for about a minute and a half to 2 minutes, Then we hold even pressure at that point for about
Okay.
1 minute. And that balances the point, calms the nervous system, calms the system. And then after about that 1 minute, you release it. So that in conjunction with some nervous system calming breath can
Okay.
really bring that stress level back down really quickly.
I love
Um,
that. I'm
I
gonna
like
use that.
techniques mostly, no matter what point I'm using with people, and we usually do it near the beginning of the session. When I ask them, what did you notice? Most commonly, what I hear is, it was really nice to drop into my body. There's
Mm,
no time throughout the day that I get to do that.
mm,
And I'm just got quiet with myself and actually feel what I'm feeling.
mm.
And that was really nice. That's the most common thing that I get.
It's so fascinating
Yeah.
because we talk about presence and the importance of being present all the time, but we don't always focus that inwardly, like being present with ourselves. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves is to be present with all of that in which we are. And sometimes we want to escape that because when we get present, we sometimes touch into sadness or loneliness or sometimes it's happiness and joy too, but we have all those different parts of ourselves. And so I think we distract and we tune out and we turn on the TV or we pick up the phone and we doom scroll or we call a friend or it's so
Numb out.
rare that we just sit with ourselves and just be present. And I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to yoga and drawn to breath work and drawn to these things because it creates the space for that. I think those are all beautiful tools, but I think you can also just take some time throughout the day to just drop into your
Mhm.
body and just be fully present without judging, just being the witness of
Yeah.
what is there. I think there's so much healing of all the things I've done. I've traveled all over the world in the name of healing. And some of the most potent work I've done has been just sitting with myself
Mhm.
and holding space for me and what is
Exactly.
coming up for me. So I love that. Okay, on a second note, because I have so many people in my life right now that could just use this information I heard in this video. I thought it was so beautiful. I'm going to share that with people when they come to me because I get that question all the time from friends and family like, should I stay? Should I go? You answered that so well. And you had great tools in which you use in your practice to help people answer that. So I thought you could share a little bit about that here.
It's interesting to think of where to start because there's so many different directions to go. And the results that I've gotten with people, some stay and some go. But it's a journey into self to be able to trust yourself and the information that you're receiving because often that's shut off. And sometimes they're listening to their brain, and the brain sometimes makes up stories and lies and wants to keep you safe and stuck and comfortable. But that also keeps you unavailable for growth and boxed in. So many of the processes we're doing are helping people trust themselves, calm down their nervous system, balance their brain. Because if you're stuck in emotion, it's hard to see logic. And if
Mm,
you're over mentalizing, going down the rabbit hole, over analyzing, it's hard to see a possibility or a creative solution that may be on the other side of the brain. So we do activities that make sure both are engaged. It's like the Bradley Cooper movie, what's it called? Limitless or something, where he takes a pill and suddenly he's kind of superhuman. It's like,
yes. Yeah.
when I work with people, we start with 6 sessions, and 2 of those sessions are envisioning a new reality. So,
Mm,
what I recommend to people dealing with this circumstance is that we spend an entire session envisioning your life if you were to stay with this person. What are the mind movies that you see in your life, both now and in the future? What are you hearing? What does that feel like? How does it feel in your body? What are the potential downsides to that? How would you address those? And then in another session, we look at what would it be like to not have that person in your life? And what would it look like right now? And what would it look like in the future? And what potentials and creative possibilities are you seeing there? And what does that sound like? And what does that feel like? What are the potential negatives to not having that person in your life? And how would you handle that? We're shutting down stress programs. Sometimes those are from their childhood.
hmm
Because if they had something happen with their mom or dad, or they were physically, emotionally, or sexually abused, that could
hmm
be creating a lot of noise in the background. So we do processes, some trauma work to lower the trauma and the stress in their system so that it's not playing in the background, which clouds their awareness.
Exactly.
And then we do a session that's called Higher Self Inner Inquiry, where balance the brain, calm the nervous system, And then we create this heightened state of awareness where they are tuning directly into their superconscious, their highest self, their wisdom self. Those are all synonyms, and whatever is their highest power. And that I help them get into a receiving mode where they can potentially receive a message about what to be the person they want to have the life that they want to have. What do they need to understand about it? And sometimes they don't have an answer directly in that sixth session, but I will touch base with people a few months later, and almost all of them have. They either stayed or they left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love it. I've been faced with that decision myself. I mean, I think most people have. If you've been alive long enough, you've been faced with that decision. Do I stay or do I go?
Definitely.
When things are difficult. And I know that my last relationship I had was a very difficult one. And it was a very difficult one to walk away from because there was love there was attachment there was a lot going on. And no one was there to walk me through that process, so to speak. I did reach out to a woman who did some type of coaching work. And one of the pieces of advice she had given me was like, before you try to make a decision, like before you decide on anything, get yourself into alignment because you're out of alignment.
Exactly.
I had been kind of pulled far off my kilter. I was not being who I choose to be and show up in this world. I've been pulled away from that. So I got myself into alignment. And when I got into alignment, it was very easy for me to see clearly that future version, if I stay, if I go. And then from there, it was like, well, this is the life that I want. So that's the decision I have to make. And then you have to do the hard thing if and that's tough for a lot of people, going back to how we started this podcast, how, at 12 years old, you were looking around and seeing people in these unhappy relationships. And I think so many times people will just stay because the fear of leaving is too great. The discomfort of the unknown. And so they'll stay in that familiar, unhappy place versus stepping out into the unknown. And I think that that's hard work. That's hard work too. And so, it takes a lot of bravery, I think, doing that stuff. But I loved that advice. Thank you for sharing that. Now, before I have to let you go, because we only have a few minutes, I want to talk about your book that's coming out in December, which is like a few weeks away.
I know.
So share a little bit about that, and then we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, it's a human guidebook. Remember how we were talking about when you get quiet with yourself and there's an emotion present, and a lot of people want to bypass that. So one of the small chapters in my book is how do you fully process an intense emotion? And I walk you through it step by step. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. How do you balance your brain and nervous system in 3.5 minutes? I mean, that stops arguments in their tracks. It gets you from a reactive, highly triggered state to being back to balance really rapidly. It helps so many things. How do you handle and manage and enjoy the people at your Thanksgiving dinner table, which is like radical acceptance? Like, oh, there's Aunt Sally being Aunt Sally again. Uncle Henry, and have of an amused twinkle in your eye as you go through life. How do you deal with fear and anxiety, and how do you stay or how do you go? How do you know what to do? So it's filled with really a toolbox from all of my life's work. The mindset, the insight, the ways that people can look at things to alleviate suffering and to gain inner peace, more spaciousness inside oneself, to let go of resistance, and to actually enjoy this crazy wild ride in this biosuit filled with messy emotions and actually be the creator of your life, co-creator, and enjoy it. So that's really the culmination of my life's work. And it can be a book that can be open to any page. And maybe that's the exact message that you needed that day. In that way, kind of an oracle book. It can be read cover to cover. And it could be you just look up the chapter. You're like, oh, there's one on feeling safe. I would like to feel more safe inside my skin. You read that chapter,
I love it. I love, the tagline said something like, and to enjoy being alive or something along those lines. And I said, oh, that's so good. Because so many people are living, but they're not really alive. They're not really enjoying being alive. I've heard that so often. And it doesn't have to be so hard. And life can be so beautiful with a couple of shifts in perspective and some tools in our toolbox. Life can be a really beautiful thing. And people look at my life all the time, and I'm a bubbly, happy person, and people just assume I have this perfect life. And I'm like, quite the contrary, actually. It's been quite difficult. I was dealt some really difficult cards in this life. But because I continue to have tools and an open mind and an open heart to looking at things differently, I'm able to enjoy this experience of being alive with the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like nothing we do is going to save us or protect us, keep us safe from life. Life is going to happen,
Correct.
but how we respond to the things that are happening to us determines our level of enjoyment of the life that we're living. And I think that that is such valuable advice. And I'm excited to read the book myself. I'll definitely use it as an
Awesome.
oracle as well as read it cover to cover. And I'm excited. So that's coming out early December. And how
Yeah.
will our listeners know how to find that book, and how will they find you?
Oh, please go to Innermost Sherpa on Instagram. That's all one word. Just DM me book. I'll add you to my list so that you will be notified as soon as it comes out. When you DM me, you can give me your email. So I'll put you on my, pre-order checklist where I'll say, hey, the book's out.
Yay.
Yeah, if anybody has questions, I'm happy to respond on Instagram. I do a complimentary 30-minute consult, and that's found at my website, rapidtransformationsessions.com. So we can just chat and I can hear, what are you dealing with specifically? I tell you how I would approach it, and we decide if it sounds like a good fit. If it is, great. If not, we had a great conversation. So I love what I do. It never feels like work. It always feels like a blessing to be able to do this.
Well, it's been so fun to have you on the podcast. I definitely feel like I could do this again. I feel like we could talk for a long time about so many
Me
different
too.
things. But I'm glad that we got to spend this hour together. And I think that the listeners are going to get a lot of value out of this conversation. And I can't wait to have you back on in the future.
I would absolutely love that.
Yay.
May the conversation continue.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thanks for being here. Thank you so much for listening in. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could leave a review so we can reach more people. I might even share your review on future episodes. If you go to the link in the show notes, you can find and sign up for our newsletter so that you're notified when a new episode comes out. You can support this show by purchasing anything from the Choice Juicery online shop at choicejuicery.com. Or, of course, if you're lucky enough to live in San Diego, you can visit any of our 7 locations here in San Diego and Orange County. And please feel free to connect with me on social media at Nastasha Mckeon. That's NASTASHAMCKEON. Don't forget that extra S. Or you can connect with us at the Choice Juicery Instagram at Choice Juicery. Thanks again for listening in.